Hello, community. My name is Catherine Jura. I am a community health educator, and I am your host for this podcast. I created Hello Community because of the current epidemic of social isolation and loneliness that's being reported across the globe. 1 out of every 2 Americans says they are lonely. And prolonged loneliness can lead to chronic illness, being worse, mental and physical illness, and premature death. The hopeful news is that social connection and community are significant healing factors in this epidemic. So during this podcast, our guests will be sharing their stories of how they created social connection and community for themselves. Today's guest is Lynn Underhill from Queensbury. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I always let our listeners and watchers know how I came to know my guest, and Lynn is my sister. No nepotism here. Lynn's story is amazing. And when I was thinking about who my next guest was going to be, Lynn came to mind because she has an amazing story of building connection and community through her whole life, but especially after a very dramatic life event, which often happens for folks. And one of the things that I love about Lynn's story is just say yes. So Lynn, which yes would you like to start with?
That's tricky. We could start really early on. The just say yes part is, just something that I realized I do. Mm-hmm. I don't say yes to absolutely everything, and sometimes I say yes and it's not the right fit. Mm. So you can always make a correction in that arena as well. I would say I probably said yes since a child. When our mother asked me to paint with her when I was very, very young. Of course, I did, even though it was hard. And we did it at our church, painting angels on St. Bonaventure's church windows. We have a big family, so 6 kids. So I think really first community probably is family. And being a middle child, there was you're in the middle with everybody, but you were able to be friends with the oldest, which is you, and with the youngest, which is our little sister Trisha. So I was able to have a piece of all of my siblings, whereas I think that was an advantage to being in the middle. And if somebody wanted to do something, I generally said yes. Not always the best choice as teenagers, but choices that we made, and we learned and we grew, from those for sure. Yes to church a lot was for me. I think I was born, I wanted to go to church when I was in kindergarten. Don't know why. Asked our father to drop me at church before kindergarten in first grade, and I'd go into mass. And then I'd
by yourself?
By
as
myself.
A little person?
Yeah. And then I'd walk around down the street to St. Mary's in Waterford, and I would go into class. How they would leave me there, but
this was
that generation,
many decades ago.
Yeah, that generation did that. So
as a little tiny person asking to be dropped off, do you even remember why you wanted to be there? Was it to be with the people that were sitting around? Was it to be by yourself? And
definitely to be by myself.
To be by yourself.
So our community, our family was big and loud and busy, and then you go straight to school. So it was definitely a quiet space for me, and continue to be a quiet space to this day for me. But that can be anywhere for anyone. You can go sit on a rock before school, which I did a lot of that as well as I got older. That quiet space that you can find because our lives are busy, our families are busy. Families aren't as big as they were, but when we grew up, everybody had 6 to 8 kids in their family. And there was always a friend. So there was an automatic community just in our generation because there was a kid at every age. And so you really almost always had a friend. It would be hard not to because there was always somebody your age, your sibling's friend. So going there was peaceful for me. I thought that the babies crying were the angels. So I thought all the angels were there.
So your story so far is more about finding some space
Yeah.
from your community,
Yes.
which was our family.
Right, but while doing that, I did create community as well. So therefore, all the different communities in the different churches that I did go to, was creating a different community for me. I think even you personally can be your own community, because there are times that you should be and you are. You just have to remember that you love yourself. I think I'm lucky enough to have that born into me, even when I wasn't maybe the perfect person. Well, I'm never going to be the perfect person, but perhaps when my behavior wasn't as it should have been, I still think in the end I did love myself. So I always felt like I was my own little island, and I was okay with that, and then anybody that jumped on my island with me, that was also great, So I think you can be your own community as long as you're growing and developing and reaching out here and there. I was never closed into a room by myself necessarily, even though I was by myself a lot.
Well, I think you're hitting an interesting point for some of our listeners and viewers, the difference between alone and lonely.
Right.
It sounds like you were perfectly fine alone. You were not lonely. And people can be in a crowd and be lonely.
Correct.
So
Yes.
you're talking about, you bring up a good point, that the difference between alone and perfectly happy with that,
Right.
and loneliness.
Right. Not to say that I wasn't ever lonely, because that would be impossible, to be by yourself and not be lonely.
Sometimes.
Correct, of course. But then those times I would read. It was a big deal, whether it was a Bible or a book about humor or a book about tragedy. I did watch television. Being alone, I think if you can find a way to be okay, to be alone, then you start your own communities and go out from there. So I think family is really your first community, and probably ends up being your last community in a lot of cases too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is, we are certainly a community currently.
Correct. And if you can hold a family together, it's hard. We are individuals. We don't all agree. We as a family have struggled with that over the years. We come and go. As far as interaction, push comes to shove, we're usually there together, but it is still a community. So, all through your life, how many communities do you have? I don't even think I could count how many I have. But I think there was a point it was pretty end of high school maybe, and people that knew me as a younger person, again, find it very hard to believe, but I was, incredibly shy, very quiet, afraid to talk to anyone, had no need to talk to anybody. And then I just I wasn't getting anywhere in life, in relationships. I would just be so timid and shy. And finally I realized, I just have to ask for it, or ask myself for it, really more.
For?
Whatever it was that I needed at that time.
Oh, okay.
Companionship, work, peace, fun, so being quiet and shy, it wasn't getting anywhere.
Interesting.
Yeah, so,
So what worked,
yeah.
and the alone was working, except for very normal. We all go through short, normal periods of loneliness.
Yeah.
That's perfectly normal as a human being. It's when it becomes prolonged. So the alone periods were not working anymore. Would you have said lonely?
Well, yeah. People need people.
Yeah.
Or animals, or books, or creatures. You do
Connection.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I usually had that with my work. So I had that community. But I wanted more. And just hanging there. You have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to reach a little. Is it scary? I guess that's the biggest thing for everyone, right?
Yes.
Is it scary? Yes. Is it impossible? No. As shy and quiet as I was in the 9th grade play and I had the lead. So I did have a piece that I could reach out. I just had to tap it. So I think everybody has that. You just have to be comfortable with yourself. Know that you're no different than I am, nor is the billionaire or the person impoverished. We're all human beings on this planet, and we have common things. We are all born. We're all going to die. It's what are we going to do in the middle? So, community for me as a single person, a lot of it was work, family, church. I skied, so I met people that skied, then people that I worked with skied. I'd ski by myself. I didn't, I'd take a lesson, I'd save my money, I'd go ski. I bought new skis, so just one little thing that you do that's maybe out of your comfort zone or a little extra, say, yes, I'm going to ski, and then you are going to meet people that want to ski, I started riding bicycles, for exercise. I do believe movement is a key. So even when I did, a lot by myself, I did either, go to a gym. I love swimming. I love water. So I bought kayaks, became a kayaker, You don't need money to do these things. My first kayak was used. And once you own a kayak, everything's free after that, and there are communities. I got on a website with other kayakers. It wasn't so successful. I didn't really enjoy the people that I was meeting, so I stepped back from that. So you could say yes to a community, and if it just doesn't really feel like your community, then you just pull back. There's a lot of times I think, and I hope in everybody's life that they do that. We don't, we're not genius. We don't have that much insight in everybody. I mean, as much as a good judge of character that we are, we do misread things, and you pull back on that. I think,
good point.
Yeah, marriage. When I got married, that was an automatic community. He had his community, I had mine. We blended really well. It was great. So you double, in general, your community. So that was another great community for me, because he and I were a lot alike. So we were great fits there, And then children, another community, bigger. They just, once you expand yourself with another person or with children, your communities double, triple, quadruple. I think it just grows.
So one of the parts of your story that I find really interesting is, as you have shared with me, that when you have the kids, you started following them. So one of them wants to ski, then you made community with your son's friends' parents, and then your other son played football eventually, and made friends with those parents. You want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
that was a lot of joy. In fact, I had said that, so being the mother, kind of a traditional mother, I was staying home with them. We made the choice for me to stay home with them. And so lucky me, I feel incredibly blessed. And I feel like a lot of women do get this opportunity, or men that choose to stay home with the children. There's a whole other world out there for us. I got to pick a little bit and choose when they were babies going to a pre-K. I was like, yeah, I like that person. I like their character. I'm going to reach out to them. I hope our kids play together. And that is exactly what happened. And I was able to, change my direction a little bit more to, really where I wanted to be and who I wanted to be with. And I felt bad for my husband, because he didn't get to do that. He was going to work every day with the same people that maybe he didn't enjoy as much. So that's another opportunity for the caregiver, I think, of the children, is they get to meet a whole other world of people and decide who they want to be with again, until the kids get a little more entrenched. So you do have that opportunity early on. And I'm still very close with a lot of those people that I met when my kids were babies. Yeah, and then, of course, tragically, their dad died, and they were 3 and 5. And so that shuts down your world for quite a while. And most people would think, that your world closes in, but really, after the devastation is gone and you start to try and get back on track, which usually your children are the ones that'll get you back on track, or your family somehow. My younger, whenever it would come up, their dad, at one point he did say to me, when are you going to stop crying? And that was, I don't know, 6 months in, 8 months, I don't know how long. And then I realized, oh yeah, time to stop crying. And, they needed to be the focus for sure. So they were. And then, they were. But that created more community than less, because then there's 2 boys and their community. And there suddenly was that open time that normally you would be with your husband, that suddenly you can give to other people. And so more community developed. I remember when my youngest went into pre-K, I maybe had 3 hours. And I knew I wanted some exercise. I wanted to move my body. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I searched for an exercise class that would fit in that time frame, which is, there weren't a lot. But there was one at the community center, retirement community center. And I joined this class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they were, all 60 plus, and I was in my 30s. And I'm still friends with a lot of them today. They were a huge, just beautiful group of people that were engaged in the community already, people I wanted to emulate, who would have known, again, just that one step. I did not go there to meet people. I went there for me, to move my body, to get some exercise that fit with my children's schedule, so that I was there for them. But yet I had this whole new community of people that, I still encounter. And I'm on a board because of one of the people that I actually met there when my youngest was 5, and now he's about to be 28. So you can stay with these groups or move on. And the one woman there, I'm friends with her daughter and one of her sons, and now we're on the board together. It's pretty incredible how it does shift. But again, that's one of those times that could it get any worse to have your husband die when you have a 3 and a 5-year-old? At that moment, absolutely not. They definitely didn't have everything that they would have had with a father, but I gave them as much as I could, and I chose to make that priority in my life and their life. And again, yes. So one became a skier at age 5. That community. I also consider there's a little luck involved in there too, because
let's talk about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. The group, his age group, I couldn't have asked for better parents to be involved with. They were family conscious. They some were wealthy, some were not. Some of us were on that team by the hair of our chinny chin chin financially.
Yeah.
It's expensive. I just happened to live at the mountain. It was the perfect storm for that child. How lucky was I? Since he was 5 years old, he had the same coach until he graduated high school, and he was a wonderful man, and I was thankful for that. And his wife. Beautiful children, love them, and the other kids that joined in still, I communicate with a lot of them. So that was a blessing. Even though he still did other things, that group was great. Other groups for my kids, one was a swimmer. That group was great. He was in theater for a while. That group was great. I loved it because I got to be in a play with them, So I just said yes. Did I want to spend time with my younger one when he was on stage? I know how much time theater takes, right? So I was like, you know what? I should do it with him, and then I can be with him at night when he's at rehearsals. So, and, we thought he was going to get the lead. They basically picked it for him and thought he was going to get the lead, and another boy stepped in and they gave it to him. It was devastating, but he and I ended up having a blast together. And he and I were on stage through a lot of the show because we were extra this, extra that. And it was still a great experience, for both of us. A little devastating, as it happens being a parent, everybody knows, your kids
don't get everything.
That's right. And it's not a bad thing. I didn't get everything. So was it hard for me to suddenly step on stage after all those years? Absolutely. Was it fun? Yes. Did I know what I was doing half the time? No. There was another mother saying, Lynn, stage front, because I'm doing this and that. And so I ended up, I think, doing 2 plays with him. And so, again, what a blessing. How lucky am I? How lucky was I to do all these things with my kids? I continued to travel with them because I thought it was important. It was very hard. It was scary. We saved our money and did that. And, I just made sure we were in safe places. But that was, there was no community there for that. but because I had been used to being, I think, a lot on my own. I think I had thought about it when my husband had died that, oh yeah, I am the one that can handle that.
Handle the traveling?
The being alone.
Oh, the being alone.
Yeah, when he had died, I thought, yeah, I can be alone. So, tougher on my children probably than me. But they grew up, thinking that, that's what it was. And, so yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So one piece that comes into your story with the kids which then ends up being a big blossom in your life, is your art. So you were always, I think you were always drawing. Were you always drawing?
No,
you were painting with Mom at church.
Yeah.
And so part of your kids being in a Catholic school, you had to volunteer.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a really, that just took your life in so many different places, of painting
Absolutely.
the windows, and then want to tell that story?
Sure. So kids are in a Catholic school, and you have to either write a check, or give service hours. I really didn't feel like I was in the position to write a check. So I said, geez, could I paint some seasonal pictures on your glass windows, which is what I had done with our mother.
Sure.
Yes. So I do it. So I start painting, and it was hard for me to have people watch me painting. I was a little slow. I was meticulous. I was, you're a perfectionist. You go through those periods of your life where you think you have to be perfect, and it was very hard for people to watch me because it was taking days and days, and people would comment and I'd say, I'm not done, and then I just let it go. It was just like, what? This is what it is. This is my life. This is how I can afford this. And my art will get me through. My art will get me through. So started painting, and then someone said, hey, could you do a mural in my child's room? And I said, yep, sure. So I wasn't working at that point because we had chosen for me to stay home with the kids. And then I didn't know how I could get a job because one of my kids was always sick or hurt. There were a lot of stitches. Because we were active. So I said, sure, I can do a mural. So I went in, did a little girl's room, but I ended up doing the mural around the whole room. And the mother said, wow, I didn't expect it to be that much. I'm like, yeah, I just can't just do a piece. So then I said, can we just decorate the whole room? Yes. So then she said, oh my gosh, can you do my son's room? Yeah. And I started making money. And it was joyful for me because I was painting, but it was also a creative outlet for me, which I hadn't had for a while, which is another piece of the puzzle. So then, they were leaving town. Could you do our bathroom? Get a book, start studying bathrooms, Then you do our kitchen, start studying kitchen. So while I was painting, I was also studying design work because I knew I only had so much life in my arm, my hand. So then I was asked to do a mural for a school, which I did. Took me 3 months. Again, a friend of a friend that knew me, community knew me. It was a mother that knew me from the pre-K. We stayed friends. Her kids, went to this public school when they left our Catholic school. So it was a public school nearby. I got to meet every kid in that school. I saw a lot of poverty. I always knew we were blessed, even if we didn't have, a brand new car or a couple of cars or whatever. But there was so much, poverty and loneliness around us that, this was also an opportunity to help brighten someone's day. And, I got to talk to a lot of kids and sit with a lot of kids. So that was joyful. So then, it continually evolved. And then people would commission me to paint their family home to give to their partner for Christmas. And so I ended up being financially secure through my art, which my father said, no. You'll never make a living doing that. You better do something in business, as I did, for quite a few years up until I had children. I was in the business world, and, that was also a great community that I kind of leapt over. I was fortunate to have to work for a company that wanted to broaden their employees' horizons and make them well-rounded and positive. We did a lot of affirmations. We had training in that. Also a huge piece to the puzzle. I was already a semi-positive person, but this really, brought it home. And, your self-talk is huge. And this is a company that we sold things that they were teaching this. It wasn't about, get all the money you can on the table. It was about, it comes through. when you are a whole, positive, confident person. And they were smart.
Well, and didn't that theme continue to run through? Work preceded the kids, and then that self-confidence, like when you were asked to do a bathroom, instead of saying no,
Yeah.
you got out your book and you read about bathrooms.
Yeah.
And you did a bathroom.
Sure.
And then, most recently, you want to say your yes about your Ronald McDonald piece, which I think is just an amazing, from painting a mural at your young children's school, eventually, decades later, leads to a phone call that you made.
Yeah. So also our parents, we learned a lot from them. When I said yes to a bathroom, my father did over our bathrooms, so all our parents did everything in the house. My mother sewed everything, our clothing, and you became a great seamstress.
So you think you had a little of that in you?
Well, I think we all did. We all do something with our hands almost, it's, we're all very creative in that way. So we did get that from them. Obviously, our mother was a great artist. I got that from her. I'm very thankful for that. It's a gift that we are born with. I did develop it. One thing too, I am not an artist because somebody told me I was. I did not go to school for art. I did not have an art history degree. That does not make you an artist. I was an artist because one day I said, "Oh my gosh, I am an artist," or "Oh yeah, I am an actress," or "Oh yes, I am a designer and I can do your bathroom." I'm prepared for whatever I do. I make sure that I'm prepared. If I say yes, I'm going to make sure I can do it, and that's by learning. So we watched our parents do a lot of it growing up, and that, yeah, you can do whatever. Most of everything I do is self-taught. So anyway, back to the Ronald McDonald. So I'm an artist, so now I'm doing design work. I did a lot of commercial work through people that I knew. I did one office in a company, then I did all of their offices, then I did their showroom, then I did their homes. Because it just continues to morph. And so I have, my art background. I have construction.
Self-taught
yes.
art background.
Construction knowledgeability through working with so many contractors. I watch them. I don't just let them do their thing and I stand there with my hand on my hip. I watch what they do. Sometimes I would help. They would correct my stuff. But still, I was involved in a lot. So then... I've always gotten great joy out of taking care of people. I don't want to be responsible for everything, but in my own space and time, I will donate or do something on the side.
Volunteering.
Correct.
Yeah.
Always. Quietly, maybe. So I knew the Ronald McDonald House was about to put a retreat in Lake George, and I live up that area, and... I wanted to be a part of it, whatever part it was, painting a room or helping with decisions. And I happened to be away when the whole meeting went. So I got back and I didn't know what was going on. So I called the mayor of Lake George. I said, "Listen, I want to be a part of the project." So he gave me the name and number of the fabulous, amazing woman in charge of the Albany Ronald McDonald House. So she started the program there. And, you just want to be her when you grow up. So I said, "Hey, do you have a designer on the project?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, I am a designer and I, love to help you with your project." She said, "Absolutely." That was it, though. She didn't look at any of my work. I may have sent it to her. I don't know. But so we were both yes. So I met her. She had me come down to the Albany house. I drew the designs immediately for the Lake George house. It just comes to me, which is a lot of what I do. Somebody will say, "Oh, are you done with that?" Nope. Not until I'm done do I know I'm done. But pretty much for that house, the design came to me immediately. I had never used the Ronald McDonald House. None of our family has ever had a sick child. We've never lost a child. Miscarries, but... So it wasn't like we had a relationship with that community, but for some reason I was drawn to it. And, every single person that worked there I adored, and they're just giving of their heart and their soul. So the project started. I liked the general contractor a lot. He was a great guy. He was very open to me. That's not always the case, but he followed what the vision was. He saw it. It was a lot of work. COVID hit. a lot of us we had signed on to do this, for free. And that it suddenly grew long when COVID hit because we couldn't get our supplies and things got dragged out. And then our electricians couldn't get there because they were bound up. And then Ronald McDonald House shut down their homes because of it. And they were putting people in hotels, so money was going out the door that way. And so it really what turned into maybe it was going to be a 6-month project was maybe a 2 to 3 year project. And some people did have to step off. So it got more complicated. And then there were 3 of us, and we were piecemealing stuff together. And but in the end, the house came together, and it was a big fat yes. I mean, it was just yes. And then I think one thing too with community, if we'll get back to that. This was a whole new community for me too, the Ronald McDonald House people. Amazing. And the children who were terminal. I had never encountered that before. It was for the kids and the families that were going to go through that house. And I've met a lot of them, and it's just unbelievable the courage and the strength that they have. And they build communities continuously. And then I'm part of their community, and the next thing I know, I'm on their, the committee for their events, which I do. So another whole community. So it does.
Opened up from that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So everything you say yes to. There's a whole, pick the stone thrown in the water and the ripple effect. It just continues.
That's a great imagery.
The areas that I don't like in those ripples, I step aside from them. Just because it went that way doesn't mean I stay that way. But I do keep the people that I love.
Well, I think, that's a really good point you make about, I love the imagery of the stone in the water and the ripples, and sometimes the ripple isn't for you. And so you step away from it, and sometimes the ripple takes you to a whole new world. And that has been the story that you have told today, is from way back when, just saying yes, 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 and trying. And then a no, or you didn't get a part, or you didn't get a job, or you didn't, but you just kept saying yes. And I have seen the Ronald McDonald work the house that Lynn has done, and it is absolutely astounding. It's 3 apartments. And when you think about where you started, painting a mural with our mom, then painting a mural at your kid's school. And then just learning and growing and yeses and more projects until you've done this whole entire house, which is just 3 apartments, just absolutely stunning. So lots of yeses, lots of opportunities, and some no's. And from what I hear you saying is some relationships are decades old from those yeses, and some relationships have fallen away. And that's just how that works. Right?
Yes. I think it's hard. I never envisioned my life as a single mother. I thought I had laid the groundwork that would never happen. I got married quite late in life, in my early 30s, because I hadn't met the right person, and then I ended up being a single mother with a 3 and a 5-year-old. I mean, there couldn't have been a bigger shocker to me. But I think a lot of it was, yes, I just put my head down and you just kept going. I did that with my art. I did that with work. I did that with family. I just tried to do the best I can do. Would I change some things? Absolutely, but who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But I think, again, incredibly blessed with community I have had just amazing people in my life. Lucky to have found, I was in a good community. They were kind.
So if you were to, in closing, have a final thing to share, what would that be?
I think that's where I was trying to go with it. Yeah. Hope. One of my children had a test. He was entering he was in a certain branch of the military, and a guy was using him as a test case for positivity and to see, attributes and what allowed him to be in an elite force, right? And, he was a captain on a football team. He was a leader. He was kind. He took care of the unlucky one and the struggling one always his whole life. And the number one, you would have thought it was leader or strength, or it was hope. So his number one attribute that came up was hope, which I think is probably mine as well, that, as bad as it may get, it can always get better, and it will always get better. And, I think everything builds on everything. My ability to be alone, I was able to be alone. I was able to focus on what I needed to focus. And then, as my kids were about to leave the nest, I opened my heart up, and now I have my second partner in my life, who I am incredibly blessed and gonna hopefully die with this time. So, I couldn't have a more supportive person in my life. I mean, again, incredibly blessed or lucky, or are we creating our own luck or our own path? Who knows? I think I had said to you once, I feel like the dandelion going to seed. That's how I always envision myself in life. I'm, that one, just going with it. But, luckily my breezes have blown in the right direction. Hope. You have to say yes. Because if you don't, you're just going to be in that room by yourself, which if you can handle that for the rest of your life, I'll just step on one more note of that as far as community and people. So right after my husband had died, I was at a friend's house. We dropped our kids at school. I went there maybe for a cup of coffee. She liked to make me cry to get it out because, I'm not a big crier, right? And her husband was getting ready to go to work, and he left, and, he kissed her goodbye, and then he came over to me and he kissed me on the forehead and he left. It was really a turning point for me. At that point, I knew it was going to be okay. For some reason, that bit of kindness, but that human touch, that human connection, I was like, yeah, it is going to be okay. And that was, I don't know how many hundreds of years ago. But so hope, you do need connection, whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be huge. But if you just do a little, it will just get bigger. And say yes. And if it's the wrong yes, get out and find another one.
Thank you so much. Sure. That's a great story.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So, if you would like some additional online support around the subject of connecting and building community, do check out Project Unlonely by Dr. Jeremy Nobel. Great resource. You'll find yourself there. And one of the coolest things they're doing is they're doing very short, 5 minutes, videos, animated, about situations in our lives where we find ourselves alone or lonely or disconnected, and ideas of how to move into community and connection. I love that online support. And he also has a book called Project Unlonely. And if you found this podcast helpful, please do subscribe. Also pass the link along to your friends, because so together we can support each other to lives of social connection and community. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional or mental health provider for any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern.